this year. I feel like the DFM roster is pretty much has no weaknesses. I think they can play through every lane pretty reliably. They are able to consistently pull off the win conditions they're drafting for. So yeah, I think if DFM gets through, then I'm pretty confident in how the LJL will perform internationally. I do have high hopes this year. I feel like.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the desk, brought to you by the LJL OU, bringing the coverage of the LJL 2021 Summer Split. That was the Fukuoka Softbank Hawks Gaming's Corporal in an exclusive interview we had with him, where we discussed a lot about his past, present, and his hopes for the future of the LJL. And in that video that we just witnessed, Corporal painted a pretty dire picture. Detention FocusMe seem to be almost impenetrable. They're playing around the map more than anyone, but to fully unravel this, myself, Master One, will be your host for this afternoon, morning, or evening's games, wherever you are around the world. I am joined, of course, by three incredible, lovely friends of mine, but also just I like to flame them as well about their opinions on League of Legends. We've got Melvin Izzle. Callum, welcome, sir.
It is going to be a fun morning, and I'm hoping that we are misled a little bit, and maybe we get an actual series on our hands.
Well, Counterfeit, I know you're excited for this series, and you think a little differently to others.
Yeah, I mean, I would never disagree with anything said by a Hawks member, Hawks for life. But notice that my boy Corporal, they said a small word with a big implications. If DFM get through, who's confident in LJL's international performance. If he doesn't fully believe in DFM, I'm not convinced either. I think the real question here is how many chances are DFM going to get on the international stage? Maybe it's time for somebody new to take the spotlight, to take the focus, and to show what the LJL can do. Maybe today is the start of a revolution.
Well, I know my co-founder of the LJLOU right here on the desk, Initialize Sam Habgood. So welcome. I think we've got a bit of heresy going on.
Yeah, look, I'm all down for joking around, but I wasn't expecting to see an actual clown come jester on the desk.
Wow.
But there you go. Sorry, I needed the pun in there. I love you, Pete. But yes, I see some of the naysaying going on here, and then I point to the ridiculous win streak DFM have been on since an admittedly slightly rough first couple of weeks, and they're now looking, as far as we can tell, in absolutely peak form, which should scare Rascal Jester's fans.
And we have got our other co-founder and your brother, Nymera and Middlecott, are going to be in the booth with us. They're going to be casting this incredible Juggernaut match series. But gentlemen, before we go on to the actual match in question, because game one is still a little bit away. We've still got about 10-15 minutes till the first match should be starting out, and we've got a lot to cover before we really get into this. So, gentlemen, I think the best place to really get into this is honestly with some of the graphics that we actually prepared for this, because we are upping the production level at the LJLOU here, and I really want to go to the very top side because this is such an interesting one. We've got a rookie coming in on his debut. About this one, because this one just raises so much more questions than answers.
It's one of the main areas of contention. I feel like it's probably the most evenly matched, with the exception of maybe the bottom lane that you would look at and go, okay, well, I could very feasibly see Kanatu getting the better end of Ebby in a matchup, depending on how it goes. Maybe a bit of jungle attention goes up there, but you don't necessarily say that about mid lane and otherwise.
No, I would agree with you, and I think that damage percentage share and the kill participation, it just shows that, yeah, while Utapon is slightly less active when it comes to the kill participation, guy's actually getting a higher kill share in his game, so when he is getting a kill, it's far more valuable overall, more than actually just kind of being this hit and miss thing. I mean, coming over to you, Initialize, and Counterfeit, where are your two matchups? I'm going to come to you first, Initialize, but where is your big important matchup that you're going to be watching for this series?
This is the interesting one. I think that you could look to. Honestly, I think most roles here and come up with a fairly juicy matchup. I think obviously Utapon and Sol looks very juicy. I think Kanatu versus Ebi in terms of the volatility around the level 6 matchup is pretty huge. I think in my mind as well, it'll be wherever Steel and Hachimecha decide to put their attention. Purely because I think Hachimecha has been on a bit of a downward spiral, particularly in the mid game, whereas Steel has been absolutely leveling up. So at least for me, knowing how these two teams have matched up in the past, if you can keep Hachimecha kind of down, especially in his early pathing, that could get worrying for the team.
Yeah, and the jungle matchup is one of the more divisive ones, because if you think about it, Steel sometimes seems like he kind of falls off sometimes. We've had seasons where we're like, I'm worried about Steel, might still be this weak spot. This split, I feel like Initialize really kind of douses any concerns I've had.
Steele's been really good, bluntly. He's playing a lot of varied stuff, which I think has always been something that sometimes some people have raised some criticisms about. But he's gone from everything from Shaker to Nidalee. Really has been trying to put things out. He's got a great counter pick rate in terms of his ability, not necessarily to just have some weird stuff to bring out in the jungle, which is always good. Looks really good on it. He's done, the Diana game's also looking pretty damn strong. And of course, it helps as a jungler that your lanes are getting so much done for you, so you have a lot to work with, but it's doing pretty well.
I mean, that's just one. And now I've got to come over to you, Counterfeit, because you are the Jester supporter in this wave of blue that we've been calling it on the desk. Where are you hopeful? Where's the crack? Where's the if?
So this is going to sound a little bit weird because, we were just talking about Hachimecha and Steel. We're on 11.15. And Hachimecha, as we saw just there, the stats are a little bit disappointing. The kill participation is bizarrely low for a jungler, especially for a jungler who's playing a lot of Xin Zhao. And not necessarily having the best performance in it when it's currently, as of 11.15, a hugely high priority pick. I kind of, I think to go back to what we were talking about before with Kanatu versus Eevee up in the top lane, that's where I'm kind of pinning a lot of my hopes in this upcoming series, that we're going to see something really come alive, because it feels like Kanatu's got an enormous amount of potential to make a much, much bigger impact in the game than he has before.
Well, that's going to be an important one to see, because Ebi obviously is the Gnar killer. He made this his pocket pick. He's been playing it, and he's molded a region around his favorite champion. We got to see a lot of things around the world with Gnar in solo queue, in competitive play, and hey, if we're in a metagame where it's good, Ebi always has a way of winning, but that doesn't mean it's like perfect, because Kanatu has actually beaten that Gnar once or twice before, so I'm interested to see how that match will go. Melvin Iseldy, you've been doing some dark arts training. I believe we've got you going over with a little section with Epic Pen here. So talk us through what we're going to be looking here.
So, the thing that I want to look at for both of these teams isn't necessarily big flashy team fights, all that kind of stuff. It's map play, because both of these teams are clean enough to win off of a lead. So it's how they get it that's important to me. We have this matchup right here. You may recognize the names up at the top. Familiar ones right here in a tiebreaker match of potential. So to give you the context to this game, if you look at the comp right here, you have a heavy top side focus from DFM. And then Rascal Jester, they have the weak side top lane, but I don't think they necessarily have the facilitation to go around it. They're very pick reliant. So look at the map right here. We've got Arya going base. They've just shoved in the mid wave with Steel heading to top, ready to set up for a TP. So let's take a look at the clip and see how it resolves, because I really like this in particular interaction that Steel does, where they chuck down the trap, immediate TP on top of it, and it means now Kanatu is stuck. They have to double back to the turret. I'm not going to put it lightly, he's dead. They're completely dead in this scenario. There's no outplay potential for Amundo. Part I'm trying to draw attention to is immediately, as soon as this Nidalee is seen, this is Hachimecha looking bot side, seeing if they can invade, seeing if they can look for Dragon, or seeing if they can look to dive. And what ends up happening is you can see Utapon is completely out of mana. They've used their biscuits to try and shove in the minion wave. But now this is just Rascal Jester's counterattack. So let's take a look at the sad existence of Amundo as weak side. They get stunned into a Nidalee spear. It was what was going to happen. But it's just keeping an eye on the minimap for this bit, because it's a bit of a slow burn, but we have Arya running back to mid, and Steel immediately bases and runs to the bottom lane, because they know the obvious counter-attack for Rascal Jester is to converge down here. So we're going to pause it just here. And now it means that both of these potential avenues can be ran through, and you are going to have Sol hit level 6 on this next set of minions.
Mhm.
One silver lining is that with the biscuits burnt, Utapon was able to clear the minion wave, so there's only 6 minions in the back. I'm going to pause it here, because Gang is about to exhaust Hachimecha. They have dived in, and it is effectively a 2 versus 4. The only thing is, because Steel has made their way down, they're going to be able to synchronize all together, stun them up, and force Hachimecha to burn Flash, even with a massive numbers advantage over to Rascal Jester. There we go. And now, most important part, is how DFM counterattack. They have rooted down to the bottom lane, with Arya not even trying to push in mid because they're just threatening with Realm Warp. That means that Rascal Jester are on a clock. All those minions we're talking about, last ones are left now, so they have to escape. They managed to get out at the end of this one, and it looks pretty good. They got a nice play for DFM, they weren't punished, and you may notice that in this second clip, it's only a few seconds later. And the reason for that is because this is what happens when you get overzealous. DFM have Arya walk back up to mid lane, leaving these 3 on their own here. You do not have the wave clear with an out of mana Varus to clear this minion wave, and Secret, as the man of the match right here, identifies this as soon as the minions take tower aggro. Don't need to see anything more from this, because it is just going to be as soon as the play is there, they get the double beautiful stun, both of them die, and now Utapon is denied an exceptional amount of XP and minions. This is what happens in these card matchups. Very high skill on both sides, and always the potential for something to go wrong if it is slightly misexecuted.
I think, Melvin Izzle, I think you actually just found the if for counterfeit in that opportunity. However, I don't know if it's a flawless one. I think Initializer might have some counterpoints to do. I'm going to come over, though, to you, Counterfeit, for this first reaction, though, because that's kind of an if for you in this matchup.
Oh, for sure. There's a lot to like about Rascal Jester, and I think people are really writing them off. Given that that match didn't ultimately end up in Jester's favor, people are saying, "Oh no, they're gonna get smashed," when it wasn't a match that required Rascal Jester to win it at all. Ultimately, it ended up with them getting the choice of side selection, but I really don't think Rascal Jester are going to bring out their best tricks in a tiebreaker match when the results of that tiebreaker match don't change who they're playing against or when. There's a lot of good stuff there. I think people are really underestimating what Rascal Jester can do.
I've got to come over to you now, Initialize. Like, that was the if. I mean, Counterfeit saying that they didn't even want to show some of their cards early on in this. What are your thoughts on that, mate? Because I'm not fully sold, personally.
I mean, the problem with saying that a team like Rascal Jester isn't showing all the cards, and for the record, I completely agree. I suspect Rascal Jester will have a few spicy bits up their sleeve. You would be very naive to assume a team like DFM doesn't have their own bits of spice up their sleeve already. They've already pulled out the Shaco and shown that one is something they can run around with. And I would be infinitely surprised if there isn't something a bit more mad up there. They've already pulled the Twitch as well for Utapon. There has been a lot of other looks, and I nearly guarantee there'll be something else available to them as well. The question is whether they feel kind of forced to pull it out or whether they want to pull it out as a bit of a curveball. And the question then becomes, actually who's got the better Gouda? Who's got the better cheese to work with, assuming it's even cheese, right? And that's always a question
Well,
I'm asking.
That's well, it is good cheese, but we're over in Japan for this one. I don't think they're famous for their Gouda, so we'll have to wait. We'll have to wait and see. But gentlemen, I need to get your predictions, as it's almost time for us to go over to our beloved casters here. Coming over to you first, Melvin Izzle. Again, thank you for that section. I enjoyed that. Hopefully we'll get more of those. Where are you going, though, on this match?
Despite my point there to show how DFM can falter and Rascal Jester can take it, I think that they falter less often. It took a long time to find that specific example, so I'm going to give them the 3-0 over Rascal Jester this series.
You didn't have to do him like that. So all right, coming over to the clown man, who's the supporter of the jesters. Counterfeit, sir. Is the circus coming to town, or is maybe something else happening?
I think this is a 3-ring circus here, which we're going to get to see. 3 rings, meaning 3 to the jesters themselves. I mean, you look at the numbers, and the numbers don't lie here, gentlemen. If we get long games, then Rascal Jester are going to do tremendously better than if it's a short game. DFM's early game is tremendously better, and First Blood, all of the early stuff is great for them. If Rascal Jester can try and find a way to draw out these games, draw out this series to all 5 games, then I think they're the ones to take it home.
And that bleeding as best as possible, and then overcome the Titans. Okay, I've seen this one before. I can believe that story. Coming over to you, though, Initialize, for our final thought. What are you going, so where are you going?
Look, when we were sitting down in our narrative meeting, I kind of put this out then. I'll put it out here now as well. Look, it's not like the Rascal Jester are a bad team. They've just picked a bad part of history to be in the LJL. Looking at how damn good DFM is, it's like you pulled together this incredible team that no one expected that much of, and then on the other side of the fence is this wonder team, and you kind of think, look at what needs to happen for them to get the series. Every lane needs to start working off. Hatch needs to get things early. You can't allow a team fight opportunity back in. The list goes on, and maybe I'm sure the cast will have some more to say on that. But for me, that leaves us with a very stark 3-0 favour of DFM.
Well, I will have to agree with my co-founder and colorcaster brethren. I'm sorry, Counterfeit, my co-caster, but I have to side with reason and logic here, and it's a DFM 3-0, sir. But that doesn't mean that we don't want an upset. Maybe I want to be wrong and maybe even get 2 of my prediction vastly wrong, and it can be a 3-2. I don't know, but I know 2 people who are about to tell me who might be happening, getting those wins. It's Nightmare and Middlecott. Gentlemen, over to you both.
Oh, hello. How are you doing, Nightmare? I am so excited for this one. I've been listening to what the desk has been saying. Pretty good stuff from there. And I have to echo what Initialize was saying. This is a very good Rascal Jesters team, but this DFM, they really put the Juggernaut in the Juggernaut match.
They do, and we were kind of joking around in our prep meeting, and I just kind of copied and pasted, like an Attack on Titan image and a Shadow of the Colossus image, because that's the story that we're telling here. I love the phrasing which Initialize used, and of course everyone else chiming in on it too, in terms of it's very much that this town isn't big enough for the both of us kind of mentality, and this little spit of history is certainly not big enough for Rascal Jesters and DFM. Last split, Rascal Jesters did not have the caliber to take it through to an actual finals appearance. They bombed out of the Juggernaut match, bombed out of that semi-finals, had to end things off there, and they will desperately not want that to happen again.
I mean, because this is the thing. Both of these organizations have been in the LGL for so long. And it's been the sort of CLG TSM rivalry, with Detention FocusMe definitely being the TSM, and Rascal Jesters. They've been that plucky underdog for so long, finally coming through, having the sort of season of their entire existence. But coming into this matchup, it's really difficult to see an angle where they actually can get an advantage.
So, of course, we've kind of been a bit of ships in the nights, you and I, Middlecox. This is actually our first time casting together. This split, actually, I'm trying to remember the last time it was. It has been a while, which means that we've actually not been echo chambered, at least when we've been on broadcast.
No, not
for both of these teams. Like DFM are such an easy team to get sucked into the hype of, and I'm not going to lie. Little bit afraid, because the last time this guy called Counterfeit came onto broadcast, he started predicting all this gubbins about the SoftBank Hawks, and lo and behold, in Super Week of Summer 2020, they started popping off.
Yeah.
And that does, it threatens me at this point on my fragile ego as an analyst, because I thought that the Hawks were completely down out, and they certainly weren't. For him to have some belief in the Rascal Jesters, definitely something which we might pull the thread of if that tapestry does come to bear in this series right now. And actually, one of the things that I do want to talk about, because I believe there's one graphic which went unused on the previous desk. One of those things is going to be about what the priority bans have been from Rascal Jester and what the priority bans against DFM have been, because I'm fairly sure they have been almost exactly the same. You look at these hugely powerful skirmishing champions from DFM, the Akali, the Diana, the Viego, and the LeBlanc. These have been hallmarks of DFM style, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really plays into the aggression that they have started to show a little bit more as we've got through the split. And it's not been uncoordinated. It's been they understand where to play at their limits. Obviously, in that excellent breakdown that Melvin is, we saw a little bit of that
very
overstep.
impressed, by the way.
It was very good. But I think Rascal Jesters are probably the one team that can actually punish. I mean, Secret turning around that play with that Flash Zenith blade, I don't think there's another support in the league that would go for something like that. So if we're talking about what DFM's potential foils could be, I know it's a little bit of a broken record, and we've said this time and time again, maybe it's their own ego.
Potentially. I do think that it is a marked difference from Spring in terms of that arrogance ego factor, where when we saw DFM lose in Spring, it was purely to themselves. They picked wrong, they played wrong, they overstepped their bounds and were slapped for it by teams the caliber that could do that. This split, it felt like their first 2 weeks, you can almost write them off from sadly, I have to say, the MSI, bit of a hangover, and for me, just a terrible meta read. You don't lose against Rascal Jesters in the way that they did back in week 1 without just completely dropping the ball on what you think is a strong champion. You don't pick 0 damage sources with a Lulu, for instance. And that's what happened to them. And I don't know whether that is better or worse from Spring, where that was a systematic fault. However, since that 1-3 start from the first 2 weeks, they have gone undefeated. They have gone a 12-0 win streak, and that's why we start building up the hype again. I almost thought it was a travesty, and it would have been unacceptable for them to lose a game in this split, but gosh, this is going to be pretty crazy.
Well, I mean, that first 2 weeks kind of was unacceptable from them. Coming in the way that they played, they didn't have the same level of coordination that we see from them now. But like you said, this is a very different DFM. And there have been a few weeks where they haven't been playing competitive matches. So I don't know if that hangover is sort of like resurfacing, if it's going over onto another month. But I'd have to agree with you. They look incredibly strong. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. If there was a player on Rascal Jesters that stepping up could carry this series in their favor, who do you think it would be?
The one carry would have to be Sol. I think that we saw, because there were 2 games that we drew from recent memory between these 2 games, the tiebreaker and the second round robin match. The tiebreaker was so one-sided, I almost hesitate to use that as the measuring stick for the entire series. I think that is the very worst case scenario for Rascal Jester, where they are just blown out by superior macro play and superior laning ability. You go back to the second round robin game, though, and suddenly Sol's DPM is through the roof. He's on an Ezreal in a game where he can put out incredible amounts of damage. And it came down to DFM fighting around Sol Point on multiple occasions to deny it from Rascal Jester, and Gang coming in with the huge plays. If that doesn't happen, though, I genuinely think Sol is the person who carries that game.
Yeah, has looked absolutely incredible this split. I believe he was our 3rd All-Pro ADC, just below Utapon, who was 2nd. So this really is a game and a series that I think is going to be dictated so heavily by the bot lanes. Obviously, though, on the top side of the map, the Desk touched on it a little bit. This is sort of master versus student in a way. Ebby's been a veteran in the league for so long and has been the best top laner for so long. But Kinatu coming in this season looks like he can give him a run for his money.
Yeah, and the thing about Kinatu, which has been such a pleasure to watch, is the confidence he brings. The first time he played against Ebby's Gnar, which has been, again, as Lexi was saying on the desk, a pick which has slaughtered this league. There's no other way to put it. It's been his main champion ever since he kind of dropped off on the old Tom Kenchman had dropped out of meta in 2017, 2018. And, he goes up against this blind pick Gnar, and he just says, all right, sweet, cool, I'll pick the Camille. Everyone in his team's going, oh, Kinatu, are you going to be okay? It's like, yeah, it's just another Gnar. Effectively, words to that effect. And And that kind of confidence is what allows you to upset the current order of things. And if we're going to go into counterfeits terminology from that desk, maybe mount a bit of a revolution. No Silas involved in this one. I'm looking more towards the Camille.
Yeah. And you can't play with fear in these matches. I think it's an excellent point to bring in, because if you look internationally, just broadly, the biggest upsets have come from teams that aren't afraid to play their own way against the sort of titans.
Philosophy.
Well, exactly. And DFM have been so good for so long that they do have this mystical aura around them. But Rascal Jesters, I think, aren't intimidated by that. Maybe they should be, based on past form and what we've seen from DFM. But they're definitely not a team that's going to be just completely faltering, completely falling down, even if they do drop a game or two in this series.
But so I'm gonna name drop here a little bit, because I was I've been speaking with a couple of people on Twitter, and actually no, we won't drop the name, just shrouded in mystery. But I've been talking with some people connected with the LJL, and there is the sentiment which I shared from the start of the split that if DFM drops a game, it's almost unacceptable for the level of talent which they've accrued.
Yeah.
And Rascal Jester are a team in any other season. You put them in 2020. They are definitely contending for the title, but DFM this year, this should be the greatest Japanese team of all time. If this team does not smash this playoffs, if this team does not get to groups, dare I say it, from the World's Playing Stage, what hope does the LJL have? Because this is the team we put together to be that beacon in the dark, which it has been for the LJL's recent history, their entire history of international competition.
I feel like that's going to get clipped if things go horribly wrong here. But it's a good discussion to bring up, because, yeah, Rascal Jesters aren't a bad team. DFM are the best team. And if they can't pull out a dominating win today, it looks bad looking towards the finals and then looking towards the world champions. God forbid they actually lose here. It's a 0.001% chance, but if that happens, it starts to become really scary for the international hopes of the LJL.
So I guess my question now is, of course, we've basically said unacceptable if DFM lose a game.
Yeah.
Do you think DFM will lose a game yourself?
Well, this is a difficult thing, because
exactly, I know, I labored over it.
They're good teams. They're both good teams, but one of them is just so much better than the other. And it feels like a disservice to Rascal Jesters to say they won't win a game. But on the flip side, it also feels like a disservice to Detention FocusMe to say that they'll lose a game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I think, looking at the quality that Rascal Jesters have, there's something inside of me that believes they have to get a game. Maybe they just they show something different in draft that throws a curveball to DFM that they weren't expecting. Maybe Hachimecha doesn't play Jin Zhao. And Recap pulls out something different. The potential is there, but it's so hard for me to even rationalize that, even with a perfect draft, even with a great setup, that DFM can't just reset their minds, play macro efficiently, and just outplay.
And just outplay, it's a quote which I keep going back to on our broadcast from this entire split, which has been one of my favorite moments from one of my favorite people in the casting scene, Melvin Izzle, who said, "Oh, DFM are just waiting for Aria to 1v9, and then suddenly he 1v9s the game." Speaking of 1v9ing, we might have the ability to do that because we are going into draft.
Yeah, here we are for the first game of this Juggernaut match between DFM and Rascal Jesters. Bans coming out thick and fast. The Zoe and the Ezreal removed from the blue side team of DFM. And Aria's not going to be able to play his unkilled LeBlanc or that Irelia, which he's looked so good on recently.
Yeah, so just for context out there, Aria's LeBlanc, I believe, is something like 10-1 or 11-1 all time. The only player in the mid lane to beat that champion was Dasher back in 2019 during Aria's debut split. And you're right, this year he's played something like 6 or 7 games of it, hasn't been killed at all, including an MSI game. We've also not going to see Steel being able to play the Nidalee. Red side ban of Nidalee is incredibly bold of Rascal Jester to let through stuff, potentially like a Diana, which has been always banned, the Viego, the Xin Zhao, like you were saying. But the first pick, Trundle, is a bit of a throwback even to 2020 spring, the last time that DFM was seriously picking that champion. But on the other side, another power pick gets through. It's the Syndra.
Yeah, and this is a champion that Arya is very good on, but it completely fits into Recap's wheelhouse. He hasn't played at this split, but historically he's been very good on these sort of control mages, on these high DPS champions. And the Trundle really throws a spanner in the works for Rascal Jesters. It's a very good counter matchup into the Xin Zhao, which Hatchemetra has played 8 games of. Instead, going to be the Lee Sin. I think that's more likely to go into the jungle on this patch than it was in previous times, but obviously could always go up to Kanata in the top lane.
I think this is most likely going to the jungle as well, because the Trundle is so good into your other early dueling junglers, right? Xin Zhao cannot escape a pillar if they're in a bad spot. We do see the blind pick Gnar coming out, and that does leave us again with the storyline of Kanatu. You're against a blind pick Gnar. What have you got in the wheelhouse to counter it? But I would posit the same question to Arya, and one of my reasons for favoring DFM so highly, and I myself have predicted a 3-0 for this team, is Syndra being in meta is so awful against DFM because they play it so well in 2 roles, and Arya plays against it so phenomenally well. He will have counterpicks up to the 9s. Yes, you've got 2 bans against that player already, 3 if you count the Zoe as well from his own team. So I'm looking to see what the 4th and 5th bans are going to be. It's more Syndra counters.
Oh, yeah. Well, Arya does have a little bit of a champion ocean, has played 10 unique picks this split, and I'm pretty sure he'd fancy all of them up into basically anyone's Syndra in the LJL. Was the Kennen picked up, so that's going to be going over to Kanatu in the top side. Is a favorable matchup into the Gnar, but I am seeing double AP damage out of the solo lanes from Rascal Jester, so if Soul doesn't pick up something that can really hyper carry, could be quite easy to itemize against this red side team.
And this is something which, I'm trying to remember who said it on Twitter in the last couple of days, but they were really annoyed at LPL picking up Kennen plus LeBlanc, because both those champions start, incentivizing buying MR. I think it was I Will Dominate, actually, so I will drop that name out there. But doing the same, with the Kennen and the Syndra here, you look at that and go, wait, what happens if Trundle builds just like a Spirit Visage at some point? What do you do at that point? Of course, Trundle in the jungle, not necessarily your highest tanky person, and it's not like Trundle is going to be against a tank themselves, but you can understand the philosophy of that and thinking, wait, hang on, what happens if we actually cannot get through to the back line because the tanky front line is too goddamn strong?
And I like what DFM are doing in their bans right now, focusing out these supports which can counter the Leona and dissuade the engage. They recognize that Soul is the primary carry of this Rascal Jester's side, and they want to shut him down early on. A utility pick like the Ashe would provide a lot of setup for the rest of his team, but it's not the high damage that we're used to seeing him on.
No, and it is, however, another very skill-expressive champion. It gives you some utility, the potential to, I don't know, pick off someone who is stepping up too far, and if we're talking about DFM, potentially getting a bit arrogant at points and getting slapped for it, maybe this is a pick to do so. But it's not a Phalios, it's not Jinx, it's not the incredibly high DPM carries that we are used to from our LJL hyper carries, 2 of which are in this game. We're coming down to the final picks for DFM. They've locked in the Varus for Utapon that was played in the tiebreaker stomp by DFM, as was Ryze. Now, I do think Ryze into Syndra is a difficult matchup for the Ryze because you are often within the damage radius of Syndra for every ability that you want to cast. However, if you ever close that gap, they get nuked.
Yeah, I think closing the gap is really the name of the game for DFM right now, because Ashe, Kennen, Syndra, they can keep you at base so well, but as soon as you get on top of them, they're incredibly squishy, and it's really hard for them to actually defend themselves in that scenario. The Braum coming out for Secret is going to really assist them in that regard. So many slows, so many knockups, and especially with that concussive blows comboed with the Ashe as well, there's a lot of potential for a play in the bot lane for DFM to get turned around.
There is, and I'm looking at that last pick of the Braum. I was wondering, okay, not really going to have exemplary engage from the support, which is something that Rascal Jesters have used time and time again. But I'm remembering back to Rascal Jester's second round robin matchup versus Sengoku, where Secret pulled out the Braum, and Rascal Jesters brawled their way to a victory. Secret was a key proponent of that because he was the person that flash knocked up to Baron, stopped the Realm Warp, got Sengoku into a hugely difficult situation through some fantastic individual plays. And I love that every single member on this map has a very skill-expressive champion in their own way.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. I didn't want to see passive picks, stuff that can't really activate everything. Kennen wants to go in. Lee Sin wants to go in. And Arya and Steel are going to be right in the middle of things, trying to do as much damage as they can before they get taken down.
They are. So, key things to watch out for, of course, is how is Kanata going to do on his first time ever on this pick? He has never played a Cannon before. He's played other lane-dominant champions. Actually, the only two people I can think of that have played the Cannon are Cog, and maybe just Cog, actually. Not very many people end up playing this champion at all. So I'm interested to see how the LJL starts to change towards that style of pick. But it's going to be difficult because you're going to have to go through a Chains of Corruption, going out through a Pillar of Ice, going out for the Trundle 2. This is going to come down to, as it so often does with flanking top laners, come down to vision. And that means, again, I'm going to be switching my mind across the map at various points, seeing how does that vision line increment itself from either team.
Yeah, so if you are, let's say, Detention FocusMe in this game, you've got Steel on the Trundle. Hasn't played it at all this split, but obviously very, very good on the champion. What lane do you think he needs to be playing around in this early game?
I think what you really want to do is punish the Syndra in a lot of ways, because actually it's difficult because you're never getting through bot lane. That's a given. Bot lane is the immovable rock, the shard of ice that never melts, and then you've got these two solo laners where you do actually have the damage in lane to set up. I think top lane is very flexible because, you know, if Cannon messes up their wave positioning, yes, top lane is a lane where you can always gank with the incorrect lane position. You can flash forward with a Rise, though, and I remember... I'm trying to remember if it was last semi-final, last Juggernaut match or I think it was the last finals, actually. DFM against V3. They played with a Nocturne jungle in the Rise mid, and they just permanently spammed mid, flashing forward with Rise Realm Warps and stuff like that. I would be looking for similar things because Recap has been a player who has pretty much always played mages. He's kind of like a Seros 2.0, but he's never really played that well from behind. I'd like to see this Syndra put behind the curve because they are not going to do damage if they die twice in lane.
But the thing is, it is a champion that, if you get 2 kills in lane, can take over the game. Your damage threats from Detention FocusMe are pretty obvious. It's the Rise, it's the Varus. If you can ever get in range to blow one of those up, neither are going to be building particularly tanky. So if you just end up trading your life 1-for-1 in the late game to take out one of those carries, maybe it's going to be worth. But that is probably going to happen in around about 30 minutes time. And we are heading onto the Rift for the first game in this Juggernaut matchup between Detention FocusMe and Rascal Jesters. DFM on the blue side, Rascal Jesters on the red. Now, we know where Steel wants to be going in this early game. Does Hachimecha want to match, or is he journeying somewhere else?
And I think the great thing about these kind of junglers is that you are such a wild card when it comes to these kind of plays. We are most likely going to be seeing a trade of scuttles into bullying out around the lane, which is actually working for you, rather than the jungler starting things off. And I think that's the bonus you get for a team like DFM, because you are a team with the best solo laners in the league. That is just undisputed at this point. I think Steel has the luxury, and has done for so much of their career, of just waiting for the lanes to give them the opportunity, rather than forcing themselves something instead, which is actually kind of been more on Hachimecha's side of things, with his early pathing being so inventive.
Yeah, but the thing about Hachimecha is it feels like he doesn't really know what to do when he reaches into the mid game. His early kill participation is very, very good, but it starts to trail off as we get towards the sort of 15-20 minute arc. Both jugglers starting on the opposite sides of the map, so Hachimecha is going to be around the bot lane in a couple minutes, and still probably going to be influencing the top lane matchup.
As you can see down here in the bot side, DFM gave a leash Rascal Jester's Dizen. That also means that the HP you save from your jungler and the time you save them kind of gets traded into HP lost from your bot lane because they don't have access to the wave, they get poked out. Interested to see now where the priority goes on the bot side. Very interesting path from Steel. So he goes buff to buff, potentially leading to an early look in top side of the map.
Could go for top lane, could wrap around and get down into this bot lane, try and get Utapon ahead. Has looked incredibly good. Not the highest DPM numbers in the league, but I think what really sets him apart has been his team fighting.
And the other thing I would say from Utapon is that he hasn't needed to have high DPM all the time, partly because his carries have been so strong in other lanes. And also, he has gone towards more utility. He has gone towards Umbral Glaive first on Varus before, if his team has needed it. He is the most versatile AD carry, if not the highest damage one. Steel finds his way early towards topside. Wave is in a bad position for Kanatu, but he is backing off, and that little red Pikachu skin is looking mighty fine as he stood a mile away from his creeps.
Yeah, and that's a really mature thing to see from such a young, such a new player to the LGR, recognizing that there's the possibility for Trundle to be on the top side of the map. And Rascal Jesters, it looks like they've completely sussed out where Steel is. Hatchemetcha going away to take these Raptors.
For a second, I thought it was like, wow, that's a really mature way to refer to someone like Pikachu only 4 minutes into the game. It's like, oh, wow, you didn't put me on blast like that. Wow, I know it's been a couple of months since we cast together, but wow, okay. But opening things up strong. And again, whereas sometimes you expect junglers in certain regions and certain matchups to butt heads, we see in Hatchemetcha expertly not do that into the Trundle, which is so annoying in the first 3 levels. Instead, going to get himself a bit of an ingress into the enemy jungle and actually counter the enemy Raptors and leave a ward. Okay, so that means that you do have some vision on that side. Shields put up in the bot lane, so nothing's going to come up with that. And we are left really waiting for, I mean, the term I keep using is waiting for the first hammer blow to fall, because you can see both of these teams kind of drawing back, flexing the arm muscles, but they've yet to swing.
Yeah. Muscles on Braum, though, look pretty impressive. If either jungler... He's a very attractive guy. He's a very attractive guy. I think the bot lane is looking a little bit less attractive to the junglers than maybe it did in the pre-game, because we do have cleanse taken by Utapon and by Sol, which is going to be offering them a lot more safety.
Also, Zero Ignites. Neither support wants to go for that. Both of the AD carries having to go towards cleanse kind of bumps up your value of going towards mid bot lane again, I suppose, because there isn't a heal to save a support, to heal yourself, because, of course, cleanses out CC. Doesn't necessarily help you on other sides of it, though. Level 3 hit from Sol. Ah, yes, this is one of the reasons why bot lane Ashe has been so important. Both jungles are down here now, though.
Yeah, starting to get some brawling. Gang has no mana, but he doesn't have anyone jumping on top of him. Hatchemetcha there for the counter gank, but still was spotted out a little bit earlier by the Hawk shot. Rascal Jesters knew exactly what was going on.
And of the lanes which are likely to really start trying to, again, to flex their muscles, we're going to go carry on the bodybuilding analogies, I suppose. These are the two which I would say are most likely to do that. Not necessarily because they are outmatching their other 2v2, but just because they are the kind of bot lanes which will try and force their own mistakes out of the enemy lane if they have that 2v2. So I'm very interested to, again, see the actual... see that coming through there, I suppose. We do have an unequal trade in summoners, but again, no heals, no ignites, makes it a little harder to turn around these plays.
And if we swap back to the solo lanes right now, we talked about DFM having the best solo lanes in the league. At the moment, they're not really stomping on top of Rascal Jesters, which I think is what we kind of expected. Recapping Kanatu, definitely no snouches, but we do see some invading into the top side of the map, trying to spot out Hatchemetcha, who pops onto his Raptors, and they will not find him, but they go for a top lane dive.
That they are. That's a level 6 cannon, but I don't think they're going to be able to kill a Mega Gnar and a level 6 Rise.
Oh, here comes Steel. Pops the ultimate immediately, but the stun against the wall is just too much. Nice flash away, though, with a response TP. One more tower hit onto Ebby. Recaps in the area, but he won't be picking anyone up. Hatchemetch has made his way along as well, but the Sonic Wave doesn't connect. And Rascal Jesters, they stop that dive from happening and protect their top laner.
They do, but Arya chooses to go the long way around the tower. Doesn't get meaningful damage onto the cannon. Doesn't even get the Realm Warp, not the Realm Warp, the Rune Prison even during that trade. I would hazard a guess and say, if you just flash in alongside the Steel at the same time, you probably get that damage and kill them. I understand the fear of getting locked up under turret by the cannon. This is going to be not even an equal... This isn't even going to be, you know, TP advantage for anyone, because, yes, the recap teleport comes out of mid, and you do get one from Kanatu, but Rise has to go back to mid lane anyway, so it's even that's muting some of that early lead you'd love to get from that play.
Yeah, but Ebby does still have access to his teleport, all importantly. And with the setup available on the bot side of the map, Dragon has been on the table for a couple of minutes. If DFM want to move down to this bottom river and make a play, they are going to be able to generate a 5v4.
They are just for now. Ebby waiting to get towards their Mega Gnar yet again. And I just want to return to a thing that you said a little bit earlier in terms of, okay, DFM's lanes are not stomping right now. And yes, that has led to a minor gold lead in some ways, but actually that's mainly from the jungle, I would say. I would suggest. But you look at, again, Ryze versus Syndra. You'd say maybe Syndra in the early game has a leg up over Ryze, particularly with the early mana buffs as well to the Q, which is what knocked her out of meta last time. Kennen, typically a lane bully, even against something like the Gnar can struggle against that matchup. I would say, actually, given that the DFM lanes are even, or in top lane even, being ahead, I would say that DFM are still, in terms of where you'd expect the needle to be pointing right now, ahead of that in their own terms.
Yeah, and obviously Ryze is a champion that is going to scale incredibly well, so it's not like you need to get early advantages. CS actually even in the mid lane, and Recap opting towards these very early Merc Treads, so the Syndra not going to be hitting her damage power spikes as early as you might expect. I
think Merc Treads are going to be very important from both the mid laners this game, and I would suggest that Aria is also going to go towards that, because while I know you're saying, okay, the Varus and the Ryze are not really going to become that tanky, you can at least go Merc Treads on the Ryze. In fact, Merc Treads might become very useful in a second or two as Recap potentially getting rune prisoned. Not going to be the case, though, as the mid-jungle 2v2 fights over a pink ward, and Rascal Jesters claim that vision.
Yeah, but Ebby is on the way down, was hit by the Shuriken, but isn't stopping. And once again, Hatchmatch is just going back to clear his Raptors with DFM in the area. This does give them priority over onto this Rift Herald, starting this one up, but the Hawkshot coming through the map will be spotted out by Rascal Jesters.
I love what Ebby did there, and I love how this kind of juxtaposes itself with what Aria did in that first play as well, roaming up. Even if it didn't work out, you have Aria using their wave shove not for just a preferential reset. They used it to try and break open the map somewhere. Ebby went mid. He's going back towards top.
Yeah, Kinato in the 1v2 does get the stun onto Steel, but gets hit in the face with a rock. And Steel will pick up the first kill of this Juggernaut series.
It does. So, first play goes to Aria roaming up, then Ebby goes down into the mid lane trying to sort out their own solo lane, decides, hey, screw that, maybe I should work on my own turf instead, finds a kill onto Kinatu, and the cannon is now behind, doesn't have a teleport. Ebby is still at the play. This is a currently 4v3 at the Herald with 80 carries roaming up.
Yeah, Soldiers of access to the Enchanted Crystal Arrow could fly that one out. But yeah, you are in a 4v3 right now. But Aria is split up from the rest of his team. Steel forced to flash away. In goes Gang into the mixer. Ebby has nearly got Mega. That is a two-person solar flare. But you can't follow up on it. The Glacial Fissure is big. And neither team wants to overstep.
How the heck did that end up being a no-kill fight, particularly from the side of DFM? It feels like... hey, a well-placed Realm Warp here to get you into the fight. Maybe, flashing in instead. That should be someone dying with your momentary numbers advantage. This isn't actually going to remove DFM from the top side of the map. However, this is still going to be Rascal Jesters recovering their numbers, getting Kanatu back onto the map, potentially for another contest around the Herald, although this time it would be without the Cannon Ultimate. Speaking of that, walking into a Trundle and a Gnar.
Ships in the night. Ebby doesn't have Mega, so won't be able to get too much CC onto the Ken, who is able to Lightning Rush away. Steel not in range to get the pillar up, but I feel like that's the second time we've seen that from DFM, and in particular Aria. Obviously, that play in the top side where he doesn't flash forward, not realm warping in there, a little bit tepid, a little bit trepidation from the DFM mid laner, and that trepidation means that Rascal Jesters are able to start up this Herald, and I don't think a contest is going to come out.
Yeah, this is one of the rare cases where DFM, and particularly Aria, again, maybe pulled their punch a little bit, and you think, okay, maybe they didn't fully commit to the play. Again, I was kind of seeing what people were saying around social media from the teams themselves, and Coach Kazu, of course, the support from Spring Split, was sat there saying, I couldn't sleep last night. I was so stressed. I really hope that things work out today.
Oh, blimey.
And that doesn't have to... Oh, no, they didn't end up...
no.
Kidnapping's gone wrong. 10 photos taken before disaster. But I'm just wondering about the psychological impact on these players. Again, I don't know how Aria is feeling, so I won't attribute those emotions to it. But I know that some players on the team have found themselves in a very high-stress situation. And I wonder if that could be showing here.
Yeah, the thing is, most of these players have been to MSI, obviously, apart from Gang, the support for DFM.
Who's been to Worlds before?
Yes, but what? So high pressure scenarios that should be their bread and butter. Rascal Jester's team that hasn't quite had that success, but doing fairly well in this matchup. Secret might be caught out here, but should be able to jump over the wall without too much issue. Dodging away from the solo play very nicely. Gang going in. There goes the Realm Warp, and there goes Secret. Second kill of the game picked up for DFM.
At the third time of asking, Aria gets themselves on the board, as we were talking about them, just putting it back into context. But honestly, the person who's been impressing me the most so far has been Gang. These solar flares have been so threatening. He has been getting into the back line. Aria going to be back into mid to contend that Herald push with the aforementioned support as well of Gang. It's going to be still 2 plates going outside of Rascal Jester, shared between the mid jungle 2v2. And if we were talking about, okay, Syndra falls behind, doesn't do that much damage. Well, okay, getting plate gold certainly helps get them ahead of that curve again, as they have offset it a little bit, as you previously mentioned, with the Merc Treads.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's always sad to see a Rift Herald used to get the first 2 plates of a tower. That objective has so much potential, and it feels a little bit wasted. But obviously, with only a minute to go until the plates drop off, maybe Rascal Jesters didn't think they'd get an opportunity to use it more effectively.
And also remember, they were not the ones who initially went towards the Herald. They weren't the team in the ascendancy in the early game. They made DFM by force back off from the Herald and then took it themselves, which is still a swing from that perspective either way, as Ebby cancels them back.
It's just
blind
rude,
in the
man.
bush. It's rude. It shows he's in the head of Kanati a little bit, just winning over the mind games a little bit there. But Rascal Jester still find themselves a net positive play from the Herald, at least, because they didn't lose any kills in denying it themselves. Pick it up, get some plates. However, from this early game, heading up closer and closer towards that 15-minute mark where we benchmark so many of our statistics around, they are in a deficit.
Yeah, looking at the itemization though, starting to pick that one up. The Hextech Rocket Belt going to be massive for Kanatu, as he's level 10, going to be ticking towards level 11 soon. So a big point of power for Rascal Jesters coming up, even though they are in this deficit. As we see, those plates were the only ones picked up by Rascal Jesters. Not been a bloody game early on, but I feel like that's typical of the first game of most series.
I'm just remembering back to all of our other series and trying to remember if that was the case.
I don't know, man.
These are like, I mean, I just kind of sat there like, yeah, normally I would say that Gang might find himself with some blood on his face as he's kicked back. Flashes out though. It's
Very
just an ultimate
smooth.
trade. Yeah, very smooth. Got a flash for an ult trade.
Yeah, not worth, but we'll take that. As here goes Ebby, very aggressive onto Kanatu. Already does about 70% of his health bar. Pops into the mini form, but gets stunned, crucially preventing the damage from going onto Kanatu. But this is going to mean a lot of time for Ebby on this tower, and maybe the first brick of the game.
Well, I mean, there are no plates at this point, of course. The crockery shop is closed for business up until that next game. Still going to find out Hatchmetra, and one thing which is interesting to me is, of course, that Hatchmetra obviously leveling up there to level 9 and does have himself a bit of a camp advantage, but still was level 9. Just before that happened, I was thinking, wait, wasn't Hatchmetra really far ahead? At least 2 or 3 camps before this point. Didn't that lead to a load of, that being the early game gold lead in the very early game for Rascal Jester? No longer the case, and part of the reason why that gold lead has turned around is, of course, the player on our screen not even choosing to take the tower, choosing to deny minions instead. And actually, at this point, Kanatu is going to get back to defend the next next wave heading into tower. I'm wondering if there's going to be a dive waiting for him with a teleport for Aria. There's a potential. Just wanting to see what Ebby ends up pulling off here.
Yeah, still in the mini form. A little bit tired though, so can't build up the rage, and I think this tower will just be dropping. I like denying that last wave. This is the sort of thing that Ebby loves to do. It's not necessarily about getting the lead for yourself, but making the enemy top laner useless.
That was much more apparent in Spring, where we had this wonderful start of, wow, Ebby's got great CS at 10. He's really good at getting lane advantage. Then you realize, like, his actual CS numbers are actual trash, where he's just, all he does is stand in front of the wave, sit up like he does on the set. Sadly, the one at MSI didn't work out for us and our dear LJL region, but that was the philosophy. It's been less of a factor of his play in this split. As Rascal Jester moving on to more timely things on our screen, looking to set up towards this dragon in a minute in advance, clearing out some of that vision and setting the terrain in their favor.
Yeah, as we do have a minute until that objective spawns, but I just want to take a brief look at the solo laners from DFM. We said that they weren't doing much, but look at those XP advantages. 2 levels up for Evie, a level up for Aria against Syndra, who is meant to be this early game powerhouse, and he's 20 CS up on the rise. 40 CS up for Evie in the top lane. They're really starting to get the leads where we'd expect them to.
Exactly, and you think, wow, okay, Kennen meant to bully out the Gnar early, potentially do something on the side lane as well, really deny that champion. Then you look at the Syndra and think, wow, Syndra, that's a really good champion into Rise if you're really good at keeping your distance and outplaying around those micro-range advantages. And DFM have just done the micro advantages themselves, taken the advantages where they're shown, and made some plays to boot. That's the thing which is really special for me about DFM. They've managed to make plays when, honestly, they probably shouldn't have the agency to do so compared to their enemy champions.
Yeah, but they definitely have agency in this bot side river. The first Drake went over to them, and it looks like they're going to be picking up the second as well. Although they may look for Soul here. Does have Flash, Dove has Cleanse, but doesn't use any of them. TP coming in from Kanatu, but he's immediately forced to flash out. That's a beautiful solar flare. The Kennen ultimate does absolutely nothing, but takes down Gang, pops into the Zhonya's. Another kill going over to Arya, and this is what DFM love to do. They love to take the smallest advantage and just tear you apart with it. 3 kills. They're going to be looking for one more. Kanatu can lightning rush away, but DFM just turn on the burners.
That is just the dam breaking, the pressure building up in the early game, and then making like COD Zombies round 5. Fetch me their souls as they realm warp down towards the bot lane behind the Ashe. They have a shield bow. So what? It doesn't matter when you're melee range with 3 champions. Seems like a bit of a miscommunication between the Rascal Jester's members because they knew they were on the dragon. They knew they ceded that control. They misjudged the distances. Kanatu also can't flash over the wall. It's a massive cleanup from DFM.
Yeah, and I think just they didn't realize that 3 people would have been jumping on Soul's head. Has so many defensive tools available, but
like I said, round 5 of COD Zombies. There you go. The dogs have spawned.
The Dogs of War have been let loose by DFM as they take that Drake and build a real advantage in this game, up 3,000 gold at the 19-minute mark. It's not been a particularly bloody game, but I feel like this is the way that DFM wanted to play it out.
It is, and now we have to revisit that point which we brought out earlier, and something which, Dasher, I'm going to credit you for in the draft. You're saying, wait, hang on, aren't they 2 AP solo lanes? Isn't that going to be a problem if DFM can start building up loads of Merc Treads and M up? Well, I count right now 4 Merc Treads on the side of DFM, and 1 person who's never going to be in range to get hit by that said damage in the Varus. The Rascal Jester trying to close the gap. They kick back Gang, not the target they necessarily want, who has the Aftershock now.
Yeah, the cross Delara going onto him, and Kanatu gets the ultimate off, but it's only onto Ebby. Hachimecha diving onto Utapon, who's able to play it out in the bot side. That's a beautiful ultimate against the wall, but it doesn't mean a damn thing. Rascal Jesters make their first proactive play of the game, pick up a kill, but look in the mid lane, DFM are just taking towers.
They are, and that is a Kennen ult, a Lee Sin ult, an Ashe Arrow, and the Braum Glacial Fissure as well to get 1 measly kill. They get a tower off it too. Great. Well, that's traded for 2 Herald Charges, make that 3 into the mid lane. Ooh. DFM trade up and only lose Ebby for the attempt.
Yeah, you are typing worth in all chat, like just spamming that because it was such a big play. And it was the first time that we saw Rascal Jesters going aggressive, but this is what DFM is oh so good at. They know how to play the map. They understand when a play being made by the enemy team is a little bit suspect, and they can punish it so quickly.
Absolutely. And when you have the Leona who can pop W Aftershock and go straight into a Kennen ult and still flash out alive, you're really worried at that point because this is the time where even the not really tank members who, and again, Leona as a support kind of counts as that, at least during their W and their Aftershock, they are very, very tanky. We look at that Trundle as well, who could potentially shred some resistances off of, well, maybe the Braum themselves. That's probably your best target. You're looking at Rascal Jester, and I just struggle to see how they get a clean team fight, barring a massively egregious set of plays from DFM.
Yeah, but if we look at the itemization from Rascal Jesters, particularly recap going towards this Blighted Crystal, I like this, recognizing that being double AP solo laners means that DFM are probably going to be building a fair bit of AP as Ebby is doing a fair bit of AD damage onto Kinatu. Just slaps him against the wall and is proxy farming now.
This is what you get when you have a lead. He has to ult the wave. Kinatu, at least he understands the situation he's in. It's not going to help, but he understands.
Oh no, there comes the solar flare. There goes Gang. They're going to give it over. Unipon picks that one up.
And one of my favorite pieces of fantasy lore is I was a big Warhammer fan back in the day, and my brother actually used to play the High Elf faction back then, and there was a wonderful piece of lore around the Phoenix Guard of the High Elf Nation who were mute. They were mutes because they had learned when they were going to die, and they could not speak because it could influence fate. And I feel like Hinatu was a bit of a Phoenix Guard there, where he's like, oh bugger, I'm going to die. Let's see what I could do after that point. He sees it coming. He sees the meteorite falling from the sky, sees the solar flare inbound. He just can't do anything about it.
Yeah, man, that was a little bit like me on holiday last week. Didn't put enough suncan lotion on, and I got absolutely... I mean, I was looking as red as Kinatu is right now with the with the Kennen skin. So
I love how we go from like, wow, the halls of Ulthuan, Warhammer fantasy lore, high fantasy, into Middlecourt got sunburnt in Cornwall, guys.
It's a little bit of a PSA, okay? If you get ganked by Leona, make sure that you're properly protected. Stopwatch going to come through now for Kinatu, so it's going to be very pivotal in those team fights, and maybe protecting him a little bit from the sun.
And that is going to be an important point, because we have seen that it is not enough for Kinatu to get an ultimate into the backline, because actually there's a good chance that they die during that ultimate as well. They don't kill off the targets in a quick enough fashion, nor really stunning them for long enough. The stopwatch could give that extra amount of time they could use to find such advantages in those individual team fights. We have ourselves the coveted J-Ram, as everyone lines up into the mid lane, ready for the next dragon to spawn. Ebby caught out by a Scatter the Weak, but it's not as much damage as you would like. Yes, there's that quick brute force power spike of the Void Staff to try and get some extra damage milked out of this Syndra build. It's not enough just yet for Rascal Jester to be feeling happy about things.
Yeah, and Ebby is looking pretty angry. That rage bar ticking up is going to gnar out fairly soon with one more auto attack, but he's holding his autos. He understands that doesn't want to gnar too early, but here he comes. That rage bar is red. The realm warp is going in. No, it's going to the Drake. I have been baited, as have Rascal Jesters, and this is going to be Soul Point going over to DFM, and they might want to take the fight as well. Hatchmatcher doesn't quite connect with the Sonic Wave. There it goes, actually. The Enchanted Crystal Arrow landing onto Gang. That's not the target he wants.
There goes Hatcher.
But he doesn't kick Arya into his team, and he's just going to be falling for nothing. The Solar Flare cleansed away from by Sol, but Kinatu is taking so much damage. Arya flashing forward to pick up the kill, and this is vintage DFM. The pillar slows down Secret. He can't get away, and it's no secret that DFM are the best team in the LJL.
Quick! Pause the game! They can't realm warp like that! That's unfair! DFM are so clean once again, and in the tiebreaker match, we saw similar plays. Arya actually being the focal point of these macro or at least the very quick snap decision-making process. They're going to go towards Dragon. Heck, they might take themselves a Baron, and with all of these respawn timers and the DPS they have, DFM just snatched this game out of the arms of neutrality.
Yeah, absolutely turned it on. It was a little bit Resident Sleeper at 15 minutes, but come 25, we are looking at an 8k gold advantage. We are looking at a Soul Point and a Baron for DFM, really turning it on in game one.
And honestly, for me, the turnaround for DFM this split has been when they started giving their team more individual agency. Give the solo laners the ability to make big plays. Well, this to me seems like a big play. And Kinatu sits there going, guys, I have a flash, but then you realize Sol is half a screen to a screen away. Yes, they fire out the arrow, but okay, so now you have used your crystalline arrow. Hatchmatcher doesn't get Arya into the team, nor does he get Utapon either.
Yeah.
The kick was, that was the idea, right? And if you actually get the rise, potentially you can start turning things around. Maybe Syndra gets to nuke them down, but even there you can see Arya still on a quarter HP, and Utapon is untouched. Gang can actually go forward for successive Zenith Blades too, because they have themselves over half HP. As soon as the Syndra ultimate's down, DFM know that the attack is on, and there's nothing to turn it around.
And that was Utapon's team fighting that we alluded to earlier. Exactly. Flashing away from Hatchametch's engage, understanding that he was in the danger zone and swiftly getting out of there. It's why this guy's been so good for so long. Now, DFM, it's about closing clean now. It's about showing how strong you are. And honestly, I don't think Rascal Jesters can match up to them. That's a nice scatter the week. And the Chains of Corruption fired out. But the chunks onto recap are massive.
Because it's, of course, the Chains of Corruption stack up your Blight stacks for free without having to auto-attack. Lands it through Secret, and the Solar Flare comes down.
There goes Gang into the mixer, but forced to flash out the Enchanted Crystal Arrow onto the Leona again. That is not what you want from Rascal Jesters.
I mean, they don't have the damage. They just don't have it. Gang walks in with a 3rd HP, leaves with still a 3rd HP. I would imagine there's going to be more chunks coming in now.
Oh, Kinatu pops the Zonyas, but he doesn't do enough damage. Ebby is in the front line. Hachimecha diving in, was able to take out the Leona finally, but it doesn't matter. Load of damage dropped immediately onto Rascal Jester. The secret is forced to flash away, and DFM, with the 4 members versus 2 in the base, will be looking to close out this game 1.
DFM just understand where the power spikes are and understand that Rascal Jester don't have power spikes. They don't have anything to fight back with. If Gang can keep going back in with a 3rd to a 1/4 HP, what can you do as the Jesters?
Well, you could do absolutely nothing to stop DFM from taking down the Nexus and taking game 1 of this Juggernaut match.
In decisive fashion as well. It all actually starts from, hey, aren't Rascal Jester's early lanes meant to be doing stuff to hem in their opponents, to stop them getting leads? They couldn't do that. First play comes from Arya. No, it's not a successful dive topside, but then Ebby returns the favor into mid looking for something. And then suddenly, with all of these movements from everyone across the map from DFM using their own lane prowess to get elsewhere, they break through the dam's walls.
Yeah. Absolutely broken down, and that's why DFM are oh so good. We're going to be heading to a short break now, but then we'll be popping over to our analyst desk to break down that game 1.
Hello, everybody. Moss1 here with Melvin Izzle, initializing Counterfeit Gentleman. That's game number 1 in the books, and that was, I think, fair to say, decisively one-sided after 7 minutes. Well, 7 minutes 30. Pre-7 minute 30, Counterfeit. I'm coming to you first because you set up this point when we were in the other room. It wasn't so bad. It wasn't too quick. It's okay, right?
So I think it was fairly clear what Rascal Jester were going for here, which is to not get run over in the early game. I think they actually did a really good job of that. You know, they stopped the Herald from being taken
very early, right?
Yeah, we look at the positive parts. So, firstly, like Callum had predicted, because he is a wizard, it has been confirmed.
Yeah.
You know, the play up the top, they saw it coming, they stopped it happening. It cost them some of the spells, but still they did. They didn't get first blooded immediately. They stopped the Herald play. They saw that coming with the Ash as well. So everything was working as it should, and then it just all went to hell because these realm warps were just a tool I think they just didn't have as part of the game plan. And once they started really hitting in, then it was all over but for crying and screaming.
I mean, I want to come over to you initialize first before we go over to Melvin as with the Epic Pen. It's going to be really important for Rascal Jesters to reset themselves right first, and for DFM, where they just did a decisive game faster than they did their tiebreakers initialized.
Yeah, like-
What?
I mean, the thing here is that basically they didn't do anything crazy. They played the lanes pretty standard. They farmed up. They stayed pretty well. And then started to come the DFM style plays. Ebby consistently looking for massive chunks and proxy farming on the Gnar.
Yeah.
Arya's Realm Warp plays were absolutely huge. And then with the comp they have, you're looking at a serious frontline with a lot of CC opportunities. Trundle Pillar comes down into Leona, into Varus ult, and suddenly you can run over these team fights. And on the other side, the Jesters, they survived early on. They weathered the storm, but then they weren't making proactive picks. And DFM go, well, great. We'll just drag and stack and watch us fight around these team fights, which were, in fairness to DFM, absolutely sublime. They were really, really fantastic in those team fights.
Well, I mean, it was a sight to behold. And before we do go into that epic Melvin, have you got anything else you would like to add about either of these two teams?
For the moment, I think that it was a lot of what we were expecting, but a lot slower pace than how we were expecting it. I think coming into this one, it looked like it could be just a potential blitz out of the water. Never really get to see Rascal Jester play the game. There were moments where they had counterattacks, but I'm hoping that, similar to what we had with the most recent LEC playoffs, it's one of those ones where DFM punch hard, then Rascal Jester punch harder back.
So we're getting a full 5-game Fnatic Misfits series, huh?
Fingers crossed.
Well, why don't you run me through
All
the
right.
highlight from this game? And I believe it's one of the later ones because it was just so good.
So we are 23 minutes and 55 seconds in. Let's take a look at the game state. We got just a minor 4K gold lead, not the worst thing in the world. Both side lanes are pushing in DFM's favor, and if we take a look at the little J-Ram we got going on right now, this is one of the moments where you get to see when it's really good Rise play. There's 2 times when you can show skill expression. One is with good Realm Warps, and one is with weaving in and out of fights. In this next fight to come, Arya does both. You can see here that Rascal Jester are pretty much forced off of this wave. They don't want to step too far up at risk of getting, well, gang highlight reeled it again. So we're going to let the clip play on for a moment, and it looks like when they're going for this fake engage, the Realm Warp comes out, and it forces everybody from Rascal Jester to have to run away. And the best part about this Realm Warp is currently, they could go to Baron, and they could go to Dragon. Both ways, Rascal Jester are forced to immediately respond. So, they're kind of just weaving back and forth, deciding, well, which is more likely. Presumably the Dragon, which they are correct, but everybody's already gone at that point. So now, you have everybody from Rascal Jester approaching through the choke point. And the thing is, you see everybody stacked up together. This is a highlight reel for Kanatu, but everybody is so far behind, they're just not able to viably go for it. They can flash in, use the Proto Belt, and then stopwatch. But look at DFM. Everybody could just flash away in return, and then you would just have a cannon left in no man's land. We have DFM able to walk out. What ends up happening, though, is even worse for Rascal Jester at the end of the day, because they're now fighting into a Varus, and I'm going to try and get it just as Hachimecha goes in. Steady. You see that he's jumped in. They're trying to kick Utapon, and this is the person you need to keep your eyes on. Because if Utapon dies, or if Arya dies, that is a majority of DFM's DPS off the table. And Ashe will go wild in a long fight if they aren't being threatened constantly. The pillar has already been placed, so Rascal Jester are split up. Recap isn't able to put DPS in now, and Sol is having to go specifically through this choke point at risk of being trundled or gnarred. So, keep your eye on the Lee Sin. They go for the flash. You may have missed it right there because Utapon immediately flashed as well. 1 second I played that clip for, and now the Lee Sin is in a position where they have no good kick targets. Can't kick them, you don't want to kick them, and Utapon kicking doesn't do anything. So we'll resolve the clip from there, and you can just see how Arya is going to walk into position, just constantly DPS, and this is the man you need to be watching now. That second thing I was saying, the skill expression on the rise, they're just going to absolutely obliterate everybody in front of them. There is nothing more to it. Goes back in for Kanatu, the Everfrost Zone, takes Recap's ultimate as well, and then we already know what happens from here. DFM are going to just walk over Rascal Jester for the rest of the game.
What a performance from them. Thank you so much, Melvin Izzle, for running us through that. That was just so well played by multiple different members of DFM, and this is kind of what we expected, but there is the sight of actually beholding, and then there is actually believing things can happen, and we've now seen belief become reality with Detention FocusMe, but that was only one game. This is why it's a best of 5, and there's always a chance for the Jesters to come back. Ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, after this short break, we'll be coming with you action for game number 2. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen.